Like to call to order the meeting of the Personnel and Administration Committee for Thursday, February 5th, 2026 at 11 a.m. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Vice Chair Cone.
Present.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
Here.
Alderman Aldridge.
Present.
President Green.
Present.
4 present, you have quorum.
A quorum being present, I will entertain a motion on the approval of the minutes from January 29, 2026.
So move. Second.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Vice Chair Cone.
Aye.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
Aye.
Alderman Aldridge.
Aye.
President Green.
Aye.
4 aye votes.
By your vote, you sustain the motion from the alderman from the, was it 14th that made it? Third.
Second by me.
Seconded by the alderman from the 14th. With that, we will go down to committee discussions. Kick us off with discussion item number 1, our fiscal year 26-27 budget discussion with presented by Chief of Staff Jay Nelson. Jay, take it away.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Good morning, President Green and members of the committee. I'm Jay Nelson, Chief of Staff to President Green. So today we're going to go over the FY27 preliminary budget allocations that we received from the budget division, and we're going to go over a draft of a budget that I have put together for your review. So the preliminary budget that we received from the budget division was to be at about $5,505,000. The draft FY20 budget that you have before you today is at $5,615,876. So that's a little bit over 110 above what the budget division would like us to be at. So normally when we do the budget, we do our best to align with the preliminary allocations of the budget division whenever possible. So just a little background. All FY27 department requests are due to the budget division on February 11, 2026. After submission, the budget division will meet with each department to discuss their requests. This is when, the director normally talks about, did you go over what you're projected to spend in that preliminary request that you got? So we will have our day with Director Paul to go over whatever budget is approved by this committee. It's no guarantee that what we submit, we will get. Like I said, I tried to create a budget where we are not living beyond our means. So again, what you see before you is the current available budget for FY26. So the first 2 pages of the packets are the BD1s, which we'll spend a lot of time with. The third page is the personnel schedule. The 4th page is the FY26 current budget control. So what accounts are we spending money out of? What accounts are we not spending money out of is what you'll see there. So on page 1 and 2, which is the BD1s, you'll see that the principal driver of our budget, and it's going to be like that every year, is our personnel costs. This category is made up of salaries, FICA, employment, retirement, medical insurance, and workers' comp. That combined makes up about $5.2 million of our general budget. To be clear, the only control I have when doing this budget is related to the salaries of regular employees. So I can adjust those salaries based off of what the Personnel Committee or President Green approved for adjustments. And just for the record, going into FY27, the only salary adjustment that I was made aware of was just for employees. So that's the only thing that needed to be adjusted. When you look at the 3rd page, you actually see our personnel schedule. Now, you'll see that some of the numbers are off. This has to be corrected by the budget division manually. So I'm not concerned about that. These are pulled from our Oracle system and our payroll of current pay. So there's been a request into the budget division to make sure that those numbers are accurate and reflect what they are supposed to reflect, but they're pretty close if you look at them. Just a few are off. But going back to pages 1 and 2, material and supplies is pretty much the same as it was in FY27. The only change here is in office supplies. There's been an increase of $5,000 in that category. If you look at our previous actuals and you look at our current forecast, we actively use that account to pay for a lot of different things in office supplies throughout the Board of Aldermen. The next category is rental and non-capital leases. Remains the same as FY26. It's a request of $10,000. This pays for our copy machines and maintenance. If we're not aware, we lease those and we have maintenance done on them pretty regularly. Now, the next section is where you'll see the most activity is the contracts and other services. This is probably the largest area of change. And not necessarily too much of an increase, but we'll go through what is new and what has been moved. So if you look at computer services increases, you will see that computer services account increased to 126, and you'll see that communication services decrease. Much of what was budgeted for communication services, we actually use computer services account to pay out of. So we're talking about our software contracts here. So some of the notable and potential ones, we have Go Vocal Community Engagement Site. That's a $42,000 expense for us yearly. We have 16.6 thousand people registered on that platform. It's a pretty active platform as well. We have our civic clerk agenda and minute meetings platform. In year one, that's a $74,000 contract. For the next couple of years, that will go down to $70,000. It was because of training, which is why it was $4,000 higher than what it will be moving forward. And then you have accounted for in this line item, the potential for a constituent service software, which I know you all have been having discussions for. We've gotten a quote as high as $52,000 for that annually. And then you're also looking at a potential performance review platform, which this committee took the steps of getting a performance review process in place, which was mainly successful, but most of all of it, not most of all of it, all of it was done via paper. This will allow for it to be done electronically. Then you got your office services. This is generally the same as FY26, so no main change there. Education and training services, we did not budget for that in FY26. We did in FY25, and in FY25, we spent $4,500 out of that account. There has been interest here at the board to continue that program, so we started that program off at a request of $5,000 for FY27. Your membership fees are unchanged. We never really go over what we are budgeted for in that account. Professional services remains at $35,000. This is the program that President Green brought to the board, which splits up different mailing and printing accounts for alder folks. And then a new not new for the board, but new for me, is a legal services, a request of $25,000, which I typically do not request this in the Board of Aldermen's budget, but per city code and also from the move that this committee made as far as transferring $25,000 into that account, I have budgeted for $25,000 in that account. So I'm happy to take any questions or suggestions or changes that you would like to see. As I said, this budget is due to Director Payne on the 11th. And I would like for us to continue to be the first department to get it in and remain a Gold Star student for Director Payne.
Thank you, Jay. Alderman from the 3rd.
I don't have any questions at this point in time. I'm kind of reviewing our past budgets as well and where we landed. I mean, it looks like it's a fairly substantial increase from past year's budgets. So
I can't hear Shane. Alderman Collins.
sorry, my microphone wasn't on. I was just saying, it looks like, from past year's budgets, it looks like a fairly substantial increase, if I'm not mistaken.
So last year's budget, what was adopted was, which should be on page 2, is $5.4 million, a little bit close to 5.6, $5.5 million, which is what Paul Payne has us currently at budget. Again, a huge driver of our budget remains salaries. That's because we opt in most years for the 3% increase. So that's the only change really would be in salaries. And yes, the legal services account is an increase. Again, that's something that we did not budget for last year. So that $25,000 is an addition. We also didn't budget for education and training last year either. So that's also an addition to the budget as well. But outside of that, the large factor is salaries.
Okay, all right, thank you, Jay.
Alderwoman from the 10th.
I don't have any questions. I'm still, well,
Alderman from the 4th.
Thank you, Madam President. Members of the committee, seems like a straightforward budget, like I want to say pushback from Alderman Cone, but I don't think it's too much of an increase. It sounds like legal services and then educational training. Looks like it's only like an additional 100-some thousand increase from the previous year. Something that I would love for us to maybe as a personnel committee look at that may not need to go into this budget, but as we have those conversations, I'll need funding allocation of what it looks like to have funds established for the Board of Aldermen to have like a program for interns that would like to intern for alders. Right now, if they do, we don't have like any funds to be able to pay them, but it's just more of a comment. I do think maybe we should look at creating like an intern program for alders to be able to have that kind of support when it comes to internships throughout the Board of Alder.
And I'm happy to discuss that as well with the committee and offline, because as you know, our office runs a pretty successful internship program. So I'm happy to identify different, we could see some success for that for the full board and talk about what a program like that looks like, which means you will have to put in regulations, rules, because again, there are 15 different offices in this one department.
No more questions.
Thank you, Alderman from the 14th. So I guess the one question I have here is, so this accounts for a 3% raise for staff, correct?
This only accounts for what we've already opted into. This is not accounting for any potential forecast increase for any department at this time.
Okay, that's what I was trying to figure out, because because of this whole SLMPD 7% raise thing, we are now on hold with raises, across the board raises for city employees. So this does not take into account, should we be able to get that figured out and be able to reinstitute raises, this does not take that into account. It takes into account the previous raises from last year.
That is correct. The only salary adjustment in our salaries is the one that this committee recently approved for one in particular employee. It does not take into account any future increases at all.
Okay.
We would, if that were to happen down the line, like every time the city does increases, the board would have to opt in to that increase, which then that would be forecast in the next year's budget, and the board will receive that when other employees, if that were to happen, receive it as well.
Okay. And we are about $100,000 over what the budget director kind of gave us as a benchmark.
That's correct. So I can see a world where he's going to look at our forecast of some accounts that we are not spending money out of, and he's going to try to get me as close back to that 5.5 million as possible. But it won't. I mean, I'm looking at a quick meeting here because $110,000 was, now we'll just be nitpicking.
Okay. And if there were places that you think we could cut from, where would that be?
I would say that the professional service account could not see any action. This is the printing and mailing program that the board set up. And I think that's because we're actually budgeted for $22,000 from Multigraph as we start. So whatever we spend out of that account, which we normally do not spend over $22,000, we're already budgeted for that at Multigraph. So the board currently does not tap into the $35,000 that's allocated for that actual program. And I think there may be some adjustments that may be needed to that program, but I would not suggest to Paul Payne that we cut it, because we cut it from $114,000 last FY year.
Right.
I would also just add that it's probably underutilized because some alder people were not given correct information in previous years. And we did have a conversation with Tracy Billups around how that program is supposed to be working. So hopefully we'll start to see, I think it's still a bit of a re-education process. But there was some miscommunication, misinformation, or misunderstanding on the part of some of the members with respect to that particular line item.
Agreed. I would also suggest communication services. Again, I wouldn't say amount, but I would, as you can see over the years, that has been significantly cut back. And again, mainly that was due to all of the technology upgrades that we did at the board, which currently are delivered, laptops, new desktops, the technology that we have in the chambers. That is an area that we could consider cutting as well. Outside of that, we pretty much will need to utilize all of the rest of these accounts. They see pretty good movement. And also as a committee, you all do a very good job talking about programs are things that needs to be done at the board that we could utilize funds that may not be utilized in different accounts to pay for. So you will still have that wiggle room there, as well as different things at the board will always need to be updated, because as you know, they haven't been for a long time.
Right.
Can I also,
Alderman from the third.
so one of the concerns that's been expressed many times, the legislative assistants don't have phones. They don't even have phones at their desks. And as I think we all know, there's 14 legislative assistants, and there's 5 desks in that office area that they share. But there's no landlines, and most of them are using their personal cell phones, and we're not reimbursing them. We're not providing them with a city provide cell phone, which I think is ideal. I literally created an ordinance working with the president's office so that we could do that. So I thought that communication services line would be used to be able to better implement those programs.
Yes, so I will say to the landline, controller's office has since then started moving forward with a new phone system process, which the board, you've probably seen some work of them putting the wires in. So that should be implemented soon. I don't have a timeline for that. But to your questions of cell phones, I'm happy to, as I said to Alderman Aldrich, look at what a quote looks like and talk through the committee long term of if that's something we want to do or not. Again, I think it's a good, decent conversation to have, and we can always try to figure out how we can pay for it.
Yeah, I just think from both a financial perspective, not putting burden on staff or paying for supply. I mean, it's like they're paying for supplies to do their job.
Right.
But then in addition to that, obviously, communication at the Board of Aldermen is sunshineable, having people,
Correct.
Particularly those roles, they're not campaigning, they're working on city business. And, that should be a sunshineable record as a result. And if they're using their personal cellular devices for that, I feel
Yes, if they're using their personal cell phones to do city business, that is sunshineable.
Right. So, which I think is part of the justification and part of the reason we repealed the ordinance so that we could get city cell phones for not just our staff, but for city staff in general, because, a building inspector or an NIS should have their own cell phones that are provided by the city so that those records are clear cut in terms of what's being communicated. So I would ask that we look into that.
Will do.
And the other, item that we've discussed as a committee in the past has just been like reimbursement for mileage for staff. So, you know, when we have meetings, you know, out, like official meetings, you know, or, you know, have folks running around town for, you know, other meetings, official business, et cetera, you know, they should be documenting their mileage and providing, you know, expense reports for reimbursement for those items.
I believe there's a program already set up to do just that within the comptroller's office. I guess the conversation would be, would the board want to monitor a program like that on their own? But currently, if folks are using their own cars to do city business work, there's a process in the comptroller's office where they can submit that mileage information. But I don't know as much about it, so I'll get information and we can have a long-term conversation about what that type of program could look like as well.
Yeah, I think even though it runs through the comptroller's office, that there would have to be a departmental line item for it, for the money to come out of. The comptroller would process the expense report, but we would still need it in our budget as a line item somewhere.
I could definitely look into that.
You know, I would trust you to figure out the details of that. You know, I mean, it would be my hope that we're not, you know, asking staff to do that too regularly, but in the event that they are, you know, doing those types of things,
Completely understand.
I think it would be helpful.
Any further questions from members of the committee?
Just a comment. I would just plead to all my Board of Alderman member colleagues, even outside of the new program that we set up, that I know Tracy have sent out an updated email on how those accounts work. Even the money that we get outside of that in Multigraph, we're still underutilizing those funds that has, you know, been set up beforehand. So, you know, I would just say to my colleagues, the funds are out there for Good Neighbor Guys and other things. Please utilize that money because it could be a really good help to update and connect with your constituents. We even have money for a bulk mailing that can be used to get that information out to constituents as well.
And if I may say, the only constraint on that is that it cannot be used for campaign purposes.
Correct.
Right, then I would request if you could kind of come back to us at a later date with information around mileage, if we were to do city-issued cell phones and in an internship program. You know, I think that those are things to definitely look into. I'm also very cognizant that I think the city budget we're going to see this year is a lot tighter than we've seen in several years. And so I think we have to be cognizant of that as well, especially as we kind of figure out these additional expenses coming from loss of local control of our police department and the implications on the city budget. Do you need us to approve the budget today?
Yes, that would be great. Like I said, I will get it finalized and keep our record as being the first department to budget to Paul Payne. But if you wanted to look it over and have suggestions or changes, I'm happy to wait as well. Like I said, the budget's not due to Paul until February 11th.
Well, that's next Wednesday.
Correct.
So
So you got a few days to look at it.
a few days, we don't have another personnel meeting scheduled
Yeah.
before then.
So then, yes, I would need you to formally
I
adopt it.
Move that we adopt the Board of Aldermen budget for fiscal year 2027.
Second.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Vice Chair Cone,
Aye.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, Alderman Aldridge,
Aye.
President Green.
Aye.
4 aye votes.
By your vote, you sustain the motion to approve the fiscal year 27 budget.
Thank you.
And then Director Ingracia, we're going to dispense with that line item. We did not get all of the bids back in time for this meeting today, so we're going to dispense with line item 2 since we don't have all of the costs to be able to discuss today. So with that, is there any written testimony? Guessing no. Any announcements? All members are present. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned.